The war room was silent except for the soft hum of machines. Commander Zethkri stood before the tribunal of his own people, his forearms hanging at his sides in defeat. His once proud uniform was torn and dirty. The scars on his face told the story of the greatest military disaster in the history of the hegemony empire. "Tell us again how it happened," said High Sovereign Krixmon from his floating throne. His voice was cold like winter wind. "Tell us how 50,000 ships could lose to 500 primitive vessels." Zethkri's eyes looked at the floor. 6 months had passed since the battle at Earth's solar system. 6 months since everything went wrong. He had played that day over and over in his mind, trying to understand where they had failed. "We followed all the rules of war," Zethkri began, his voice shaking slightly. "We studied the humans for cycles. We watched their ships, counted their weapons, measured their technology. They were nothing compared to us, children playing with toys." The other members of the tribunal shifted in their seats. They all knew what was coming, but they needed to hear it again. They needed to understand how the mighty hegemony could fall to such a weak enemy. "The intelligence reports were clear," Zethkri continued. "The humans had exactly 512 combat vessels. Their weapons used simple energy beams. Their armor was made of basic metal alloys. Their fastest ships could barely reach half the speed of our slowest fighters." Veltar, the tactical analyst, nodded from his position at the side of the room. He had been there too. He had seen it all happen. "The numbers were correct, Commander. We checked them 3 times. Even added extra ships to be safe." "Yes," Zethkri said, his voice getting stronger. "We brought 50,000 ships to fight. 500. 100 to 1 odds. No species in the galaxy had ever survived such numbers. The humans should have surrendered the moment they saw our fleet. But they had not surrendered. That was the first sign that something was different. About these humans, Zethkri remembered the moment clearly. The great hegemony fleet had dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the human solar system. 50,000 ships stretched across space like a metal cloud. Each ship was the size of a human city. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a planet. The humans had responded within hours. Their small fleet had left the safety of their planet and moved toward the hegemony armada. Not away from it. Toward it. "They came straight at us," Zethkri told the tribunal. No fear. No hesitation. As if 500 ships could somehow defeat 50,000. High Sovereign Krixmon leaned forward. "Did you consider that this might be a trap?" "Of course," Zethkri replied. "But what trap could work against such odds? We scanned the entire system. No hidden fleets, no secret weapons, no massive defense platforms, just their small ships and their single planet. That had been their first mistake. They had looked for the obvious things. Hidden fleets, secret bases, massive weapons. They had not looked for what the humans had actually prepared. The human fleet was led by a ship called the Liberty. On board was Commander Jake Morrison, the human fleet leader. The hegemony had studied him too. 43 years old, born on Earth, no special training, no unique skills, just another human soldier. "Morrison sent us a message," Zethkri continued. "He said they wanted to negotiate. He said they knew they were outnumbered, but they would not give up without a fight." The tribunal members made soft sounds of disbelief. Fighting when outnumbered 100 to 1 was not brave. It was stupid. "What did you tell him?" asked Krixmon. "I told him what I told all the other species we conquered. Surrender now and some of his people would live. Fight us and they would all die." Morrison's response had been simple and direct. He had said no. The human commander had explained that his people would rather die fighting than live as slaves. He had said that freedom was worth more than life. Words that the hegemony had heard before from other species. Words that always meant nothing in the end. "We gave them 1 day to reconsider," Zethkri said. Morrison used that time well. He moved his ships into formation between our fleet and his planet. A classic defensive position. Exactly what our tactics manuals said primitive species would do. During that day, the hegemony had prepared for battle. 50,000 ships had organized into attack formations. Each formation had more firepower than the entire human fleet. The plan was simple. Destroy the human ships quickly, then demand surrender from the planet below. But something felt wrong from the beginning. The humans were too calm, too organized. Their ships moved with purpose, not panic. Their communications were brief and professional. They acted like they had a plan. Morrison's ship broadcast a message to all human vessels. Zethkri remembered. He said, "Remember why we fight. Remember what we protect. Make every shot count." Strange words for a commander about to die. When the day of waiting ended, the battle began exactly as expected. The hegemony fleet advanced in perfect formation. Their weapons charged, their shields activated. Victory seemed certain. The human ships opened fire first. Their energy beams struck the front line of hegemony vessels. The attacks were weak, as expected. They barely damaged the alien armor, but they kept firing. And firing. And firing. They fought like they thought they could win, Zethkri told the tribunal. Not like a species facing extinction, like they knew something we did not. Human ships were destroyed one by one. The Liberty was hit multiple times but kept fighting. Morrison's voice could be heard on radio channels giving orders, encouraging his people, never showing fear or doubt. But as each human ship died, something strange happened. Their final transmissions were not cries for help or words of surrender. They were data streams, technical information, detailed scans of hegemony ships and weapons. "We thought they were trying to learn our technology," Zethkri said quietly. "We thought it was the desperation of a dying species. We were wrong." The first part of the battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, most of the human fleet was destroyed. Only a few dozen ships remained, including the badly damaged Liberty. The hegemony had lost less than 50 vessels. Victory was ours, Zethkri concluded, or so we believed. We had no idea that the real battle was just beginning. High Sovereign Krixman raised one of his clawed hands. "Stop," he commanded. "Before you continue with the battle, tell us about the beginning. Tell us about first contact with these humans, the real story." Zethkri's shoulders sagged. This was the part he hated most, the part that showed how everything had gone wrong from the very start. "First contact happened 23 cycles ago," he began. "But the official records are not complete." The tribunal members looked at each other with surprise. Official records were always complete. The hegemony kept detailed files on every species they encountered. "The humans came to us first," Zethkri admitted. His voice was barely above a whisper. "They sent an exploration ship to the edge of their solar system, a research vessel called the Pioneer. It was small, unarmed, and carried only 12 humans." Veltar shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had been a junior officer then, serving on patrol duty in that sector. He remembered the day well. The ship was led by Dr. Amy Walsh, Zethkri continued. A human scientist, 38 years old. She had spent her entire life studying space and looking for other intelligent species. When they found us, she was excited, happy. She believed contact with aliens would be the greatest moment in human history. The irony was bitter. That greatest moment had become their greatest tragedy. "Dr. Walsh transmitted messages to us for 3 days," Zethkri said. "Mathematical formulas, star charts, pictures of Earth and its people, music, art, stories. She wanted to share everything about human culture with us." The hegemony patrol fleet had received these transmissions with confusion. Most species they encountered either attacked immediately or begged for mercy. The humans did neither. They seemed genuinely interested in peaceful contact. "Commander Drexka was leading our patrol that day," Zethkri explained. "He was old school. He believed that any species advanced enough for space travel was a potential threat to the Empire. Drexka had studied the human transmissions carefully. He had seen their planet with its billions of inhabitants. He had seen their cities and their technology. He had seen their weapons, primitive as they were, and he had made a decision that changed everything. The humans sent a final message," Zethkri remembered. Dr. Walsh herself appeared on screen. She was smiling. She said that her people came in peace and friendship. She said they wanted to learn about the galaxy and share what they knew. But Drexka had focused on different details. The human ship had energy shields. It had faster-than-light travel. It had advanced computers and communication systems. To him, these were not signs of a peaceful species. They were signs of a species that could become dangerous if given time to grow. Dr. Walsh requested permission to approach our ships, Zethkri said. She wanted to meet face-to-face. She said it would be an honor to shake hands with representatives of another intelligent species. Instead, Drexka had given the order to fire. The human ship was destroyed in seconds. Zethkri told the silent tribunal. 12 lives ended in an instant. Dr. Walsh died believing she had achieved first contact with a peaceful alien race. But that was not the end of the story. In the final moments before her ship was destroyed, Dr. Walsh had done something that would change the course of history. She had transmitted everything she had learned about the hegemony back to Earth. We did not know about the final transmission, Zethkri admitted. Our sensors showed the human ship powering down its weapons and shields as a sign of surrender. We thought they were giving up. We did not realize they were redirecting all power to their communication array. In those last few seconds, Dr. Walsh had sent detailed scans of hegemony ship designs, weapon signatures, shield frequencies, and tactical formations back to her home world. She had also transmitted her analysis of alien psychology based on their aggressive response to peaceful contact. The humans received everything, Zethkri said. Ship designs, weapon specifications, behavioral patterns. They studied it all for 23 cycles. While we forgot about the incident and moved on to other conquests, they prepared. Admiral Ryan Blake had been a young officer in the human space program when Dr. Walsh died. He had been the one to receive her final transmission. He had been the one to understand what it meant. Blake convinced his government that the aliens would return, Zethkri explained. He said that any species that would destroy a peaceful research vessel without warning would eventually come to destroy Earth itself. The humans had spent the next 20 years preparing for war. Not the kind of war they had fought among themselves, but a completely different kind of conflict against an enemy with superior technology and overwhelming numbers. They knew they could not build as many ships as us, Zethkri said. They knew their weapons were weaker. They knew their armor was thinner, so they planned a different kind of battle. The humans had studied every detail of Dr. Walsh's data. They had learned how hegemony ships moved, how they fought, how they thought. They had identified weaknesses that even the hegemony did not know existed. Captain Lisa Carter was in charge of their preparation program, Zethkri continued. She organized the entire human defense network. She trained their pilots. She designed their strategies. She turned their entire solar system into a weapon. But the most important thing the humans had learned from Dr. Walsh's sacrifice was about hegemony psychology. They understood that the aliens always fought the same way, always used the same tactics, always expected their enemies to behave in predictable patterns. They knew we would bring overwhelming force, Zethkri said. They knew we would attack directly. They knew we would expect them to defend their planet from orbit. So they planned to do something we would never expect. 20 years of preparation. 20 years of turning weakness into strength. 20 years of preparing for a battle that most of the galaxy thought was impossible to win. When our fleet arrived at Earth, Zethkri concluded this part of his story, we thought we were fighting primitives who had stumbled onto space travel by accident. We did not know we were fighting a species that had spent 2 decades studying our every weakness and preparing for our arrival. Lieutenant Sam Parker had been born 3 years after Dr. Walsh died. He had grown up knowing that aliens existed and that they were coming. His entire life had been shaped by that knowledge. He and thousands of other young humans had trained for one purpose: to fight an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat. The humans never forgot what happened to Dr. Walsh, Zethkri said quietly. They never forgot that we killed her for trying to make friends. And they never forgave us for it. The real battle for Earth had begun 23 years before the first shot was fired. It had begun the moment Dr. Walsh died, and it had been building ever since. Zethkri took a deep breath before continuing his story. The next part was the hardest to tell. It was the moment when everything changed. the moment when the hegemony realized they had walked into a trap that had been 20 years in the making. After we destroyed most of their fleet, we advanced toward Earth, he said. Our formation was perfect, 50,000 ships moving together like a giant fist. Victory seemed certain. The remaining human ships retreated toward their home planet. Commander Jake Morrison's damaged ship, the Liberty, led the retreat. The hegemony fleet followed, confident that the battle was almost over. We expected them to make their final stand at Earth's moon, Zethkri explained. Most species try to use their planet's natural satellite as a defensive position. It gives them cover and a place to hide their remaining forces. But the humans did something different. They flew past their moon without stopping. They flew past several of their outer planets without using them for cover. They seemed to be running toward Earth with no plan at all. Morrison was transmitting on all frequencies, Zethkri remembered. He was giving orders to his remaining ships, but the orders made no sense. He told them to maintain specific speeds, to follow exact flight paths, to stay in precise formations. Veltar had been monitoring these transmissions from his position on the command ship. At the time, he thought the human commander was simply trying to keep his broken fleet together during their retreat. The humans were flying in patterns, Veltar said from his seat at the tribunal. Complex mathematical patterns that served no tactical purpose. We thought Morrison had lost his mind from the stress of defeat. But those patterns had a purpose, a deadly purpose that the hegemony did not understand until it was too late. As the alien fleet chased the retreating humans deeper into the solar system, strange things began to happen. Small objects started appearing on their sensors, tiny blips that seemed to come from nowhere. At first we thought they were space debris, Zethkri said. Broken pieces of the human ships we had destroyed. The objects were too small to be weapons, too slow to be missiles. The objects were asteroids, chunks of rock and metal that had been floating in space for millions of years. But these asteroids were moving in ways that natural objects should not move. Captain Lisa Carter's voice came. Over the communication channels, Zethkri continued. She was not on any of the retreating ships. She was somewhere else in the system, somewhere we could not locate. Carter's message was simple and terrifying. She said that the hegemony fleet was exactly where the humans wanted them to be. She said that the retreat had not been a retreat at all. It had been bait. "Welcome to our solar system," Carter had said. "We have been waiting for you." The first asteroid struck a hegemony ship on the outer edge of their formation. The impact was devastating. The rock was moving at incredible speed, accelerated by hidden engines that the aliens had not detected. It punched through the alien ship's shields and armor like they were made of paper. "One ship," Zethkri said to the tribunal. "We lost one ship to a flying rock. We thought it was an accident, a lucky shot by desperate humans." Then a second asteroid struck, then a third, then dozens more. The humans had spent 20 years turning their solar system into a weapons platform. They had attached engines and guidance systems to thousands of asteroids. They had calculated orbital paths and gravitational assists. They had turned simple rocks into guided missiles that could strike from any direction. The asteroids came from everywhere, Zethkri said, his voice shaking with the memory. Above us, below us, from the sides. Some came straight at us. Others curved around planets and moons using gravity to increase their speed. The hegemony fleet tried to shoot down the incoming rocks. Their weapons fired in all directions. But for every asteroid they destroyed, 10 more appeared. The humans had prepared thousands of them. Morrison's retreat path suddenly made sense, Veltar added. He had led us into the perfect position, the exact spot where all the asteroid paths converged. We were in the center of a giant trap, but the asteroids were only the beginning, as the alien ships struggled to defend against the rock bombardment. Other hidden weapons activated throughout the solar system. Massive railguns that had been built into the surfaces of moons opened fire. These weapons had been disguised as mining equipment or research stations. The hegemony scouts had seen them during their reconnaissance but had dismissed them as harmless industrial tools. The railgun projectiles moved faster than our sensors. Could track, Zethkri explained. Simple metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds. They hit our ships before we even knew they had been fired. The humans had also hidden weapons platforms in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. These platforms looked like natural rocks from the outside, but they contained advanced missile systems and particle beam weapons. Every piece of debris in their solar system was a potential weapon, Zethkri said. Every moon was a gun platform. Every asteroid was a missile. The humans had turned physics itself against us. The hegemony formation began to break apart as ships tried to avoid the constant bombardment. But breaking formation only made things worse. The humans had planned for this too. Lieutenant Sam Parker led a squadron of hidden human fighters that had been waiting in the shadow of Jupiter's largest moon. These ships were smaller and faster than the ones that had been destroyed earlier. They struck at the confused alien vessels like angry wasps. Parker's fighters used hit-and-run tactics, Zethkri continued. They would appear from behind cover, fire a few shots, then disappear again. We could not pin them down or predict where they would strike next. The most terrifying part was the coordination. Every human weapon, from the largest railgun to the smallest fighter, was working together as part of a single plan. The asteroids would force alien ships to move in specific directions. The railguns would fire at exactly the right moment to hit the moving targets. The fighters would attack ships that were already damaged and confused. It was like fighting the solar system itself, Zethkri said. Not just the humans, but the planets, the moons, the asteroids, everything. They had turned their entire star system into one giant weapon. Commander Jake Morrison's voice came over the communication channels again, but this time he was not giving orders to retreat. He was giving orders to attack. All units, execute Phase 2, Morrison had said. Show them what happens when you threaten Earth. Phase 2 turned out to be even worse than Phase 1. Hidden, human installations throughout the solar system began activating simultaneously. Weapons that had been disguised as space stations, mining facilities, and scientific outposts revealed their true purpose. We had been surrounded from the moment we entered their system. Zethkri concluded this part of his testimony. The humans had spent 20 years preparing this trap. They knew exactly how we would attack. They knew exactly where we would position our ships. And they were ready for us. The mighty hegemony fleet, which had conquered 100 worlds, was being torn apart by flying rocks and hidden guns. The humans had taken their greatest weakness, small numbers, and turned it into their greatest strength. They did not need to match the aliens ship for ship. They just needed to make the entire solar system their ally. The tribunal room was completely silent as Zethkri continued his story. Every alien in the room knew what was coming next. The part that still gave them nightmares. The part that showed just how badly they had underestimated the human species. The asteroid bombardment was only the beginning, Zethkri said quietly. As our ships burned and our formation collapsed, we thought we had seen the worst of human planning. We were wrong. Admiral Ryan Blake's voice suddenly filled every communication channel in the solar system. His transmission was being broadcast from Earth itself, reaching not just the battle zone but every corner of known space. Attention hegemony forces, Blake had said, his voice calm and cold. You made a mistake 23 years ago when you killed Dr. Amy Walsh. You made an even bigger mistake when you came here today. Allow me to show you the price of underestimating humanity. What happened next changed everything the hegemony thought they knew about warfare. Explosions began happening throughout our supply lines, Zethkri explained to the stunned tribunal, not just in the solar system but in star systems hundreds of light years away. Our fuel depots, ammunition stores, repair facilities, all of them were being destroyed simultaneously. Feltar leaned forward in his seat. How is that possible? Humans barely had space travel 20 years ago. How could they have agents in our territory? That is what we asked ourselves, Zethkri replied. The answer came from Blake himself. He explained that humans had been infiltrating our empire for 15 years, not with armies or fleets, but with individuals. Spies, saboteurs, people who looked and acted like loyal hegemony citizens. The humans had used their knowledge of alien psychology gained from Dr. Walsh's final transmission to create perfect disguises. They had studied how different alien species behaved, how they talked, how they thought. Then they had sent volunteers to live among them. Human agents had been working in our shipyards, Zethkri continued. They had been serving on our cargo ships. They had been living in our cities, working in our factories, even serving in our military. All of them waiting for this day. The infiltration had been slow and careful. One human here, two there. Never enough to be noticed, but always in the right places to do maximum damage when the time came. A human named Tom Bradley had been working as a mechanic on Supply Station 7 for 3 years, Zethkri said. His alien co-workers liked him. He was friendly, hardworking, reliable. When Blake gave the signal, Bradley destroyed the entire station and every ship docked there. Similar stories were happening across the hegemony empire. Humans who had lived quiet, normal lives among aliens suddenly revealed themselves as saboteurs. They destroyed critical infrastructure, stole important information, and vanished into the chaos they had created. But the real shock was still coming. Commander Jake Morrison's ship reappeared on our sensors, Zethkri said. The Liberty, which we thought we had destroyed hours earlier. Morrison was alive, and he was broadcasting from inside one of our own vessels. The alien tribunal members made sounds of disbelief. How could a human commander end up on a hegemony ship? Morrison explained everything, Zethkri continued. When his ship was damaged, he had not retreated to safety. Instead, he had led a boarding party onto one of our vessels. They had captured it from the inside. The humans had done something that no other species had ever attempted. They had turned the hegemony's own rigid command structure against them. Morrison understood our psychology better than we understood it ourselves, Zethkri admitted. He knew that our crews follow orders without question. He knew that our officers fear punishment more than they fear death. He used these weaknesses to take control of entire ships. Morrison had appeared on the bridge of the captured alien vessel, wearing a hegemony uniform. He had spoken in perfect alien language, using the correct rank insignia and command codes. The crew had been so confused and frightened that they had obeyed his orders without thinking. He convinced them that he was a special inspector sent by High Command, Zethkri said. He told them that their captain was a traitor, and that they must follow his instructions to prove their loyalty. Within hours, Morrison had control of not just one ship, but an entire squadron. The alien crews were so afraid of being accused of treason that they did exactly what he told them to do. He turned our own ships against us, Zethkri said, his voice filled with shame. Hegemony vessels firing on other hegemony vessels, our crews fighting each other while Morrison coordinated the attacks. But even this was not the humans' most devastating weapon. Dr. Amy Walsh's research had given us more than just technical information, Zethkri continued. She had studied our biology, our genetics, our immune systems. The humans had spent 20 years developing targeted biological weapons. The weapons were not designed to kill. They were designed to disable. Microscopic viruses that attacked the neural interfaces aliens used to control their technology. The viruses spread through ship ventilation systems, infecting entire crews within minutes. The infected crews could not operate their weapons or shields, Zethkri explained. They remained conscious and aware, but they could no longer interface with their ship's computers. Their vessels became floating coffins, helpless and defenseless. Captain Lisa Carter's voice came over the communication channels again. She revealed that the biological weapon had been released throughout the hegemony fleet at the very beginning of the battle. Every alien ship had been slowly losing its ability to function. The weapon was invisible and undetectable, Zethkri said. It spread through our recycled air systems. Every breath we took brought us closer to technological paralysis. Ship after ship began going dark as their crews lost the ability to control their systems. Advanced hegemony vessels with technology far superior to anything humans possessed became useless chunks of metal floating in space. We finally understood the true scope of human preparation, Zethkri told the tribunal. They had not just planned for a battle. They had planned for total war. They had turned our own biology, psychology, and technology against us. Lieutenant Sam Parker's fighter squadron emerged from hiding again, this time to capture the disabled alien vessels. The humans boarded ship after ship, taking prisoners and gathering intelligence. Parker himself led the boarding party onto my command ship. Zethkri said quietly. He was young, maybe 25 years old. But he looked at me, with eyes that had seen too much, eyes that remembered Dr. Amy Walsh. The young pilot had spoken to Zethkri in perfect alien language. He had said that this was what happened when you attacked innocent explorers. He had said that humanity never forgot and never forgave. The humans had weapons we never imagined. Zethkri concluded this part of his testimony. Not just guns and missiles, but psychology and biology and infiltration. They had turned every aspect of civilization into a weapon. The great hegemony fleet was falling apart. Ships disabled by biological weapons, crews confused by psychological warfare, supply lines destroyed by hidden saboteurs. The humans had not just defeated them in battle, they had outthought them at every level. We came expecting to fight primitives, Zethkri said. Instead, we found ourselves fighting an enemy that understood us better than we understood ourselves. Zethkri stood silent for a long moment before continuing his testimony. The final part of his story was the hardest to tell. It was the part about the price of victory. The part that showed that even when humans won, they lost everything that mattered. The battle lasted 18 hours, he said quietly. When it ended, the great hegemony fleet was completely destroyed. 50,000 ships reduced to floating metal and scattered debris. The most powerful armada in galactic history had been defeated by 500 human vessels and their solar system weapons. High Sovereign Krixmon leaned forward in his throne. And the human losses? Zethkri's voice became even quieter. Total. Complete. They lost everything. The tribunal members looked confused. How could the humans have lost everything if they had won the battle? The humans never intended to survive the battle, Zethkri explained. Their entire strategy was based on sacrifice. They knew from the beginning that defeating us would cost them their civilization. Admiral Ryan Blake had made this clear in his final transmission to the hegemony survivors. He had explained that Earth's population before the battle was 12 billion people. After the battle, less than 6 billion remained alive. Half their species died in 18 hours, Zethkri said. The asteroid bombardment that destroyed our ships also devastated their own planet. The gravitational disruptions from moving so many large rocks had caused earthquakes and tidal waves across Earth. The humans had known this would happen. They had calculated the cost before the battle began, but they had decided that 6 billion survivors were better than 12 billion slaves. Their space infrastructure was completely gone, Zethkri continued. Every orbital station, every moon base, every asteroid mining facility had been converted into weapons and used up in the battle. It would take them centuries to rebuild their presence in space. Captain Lisa Carter had been one of the casualties. Her command center on the far side of Earth's moon had been destroyed when one of the redirected asteroids had struck it. She had died knowing that her strategy had worked, but she had not lived to see the victory. Commander Jake Morrison survived, Zethkri said. But when he returned to Earth, he found a world in ruins. The cities where he had grown up were flooded or buried under rubble. The spaceports where he had trained were gone. The people he had fought to protect were dead. Lieutenant Sam Parker had also survived the battle. He had been one of the few pilots to make it back to Earth's surface. But the planet he landed on was not the same world he had left. Parker's fighter touched down in what used to be the city of Denver, Zethkri recounted. The entire area was covered in ash from the volcanic eruptions caused by the gravitational disruptions. He had to walk for 3 days before he found other survivors. The humans had won the greatest military victory in galactic history. They had proven that intelligence and preparation could defeat overwhelming numbers, but the cost had been almost everything they held dear. The surviving humans gathered in temporary shelters, Zethkri continued. They had no power, no communications, no transportation. They had to start over from almost nothing, like their ancestors thousands of years ago. But even in defeat, the humans had accomplished something remarkable. Word of their victory spread throughout the galaxy faster than any hegemony fleet could travel. Species that had been conquered by the aliens began to hope. Worlds that had accepted slavery began to plan rebellion. The hegemony empire started falling apart within weeks, Zethkri admitted. Species we had ruled for centuries suddenly remembered that they wanted to be free. They had seen that the mighty hegemony could be defeated, and they wanted to try it themselves. The human strategy had done more than just save Earth. It had inspired the entire galaxy to resist alien domination. Morrison had lived long enough to see the first reports of alien worlds declaring independence. He had smiled when he heard that the mining colonies of Kepler 442 had driven out their hegemony overseers. He had laughed when he learned that the agricultural world of Ross 128 had destroyed every alien facility on their planet. Morrison died 2 months after the battle, Zethkri said softly. Not from his wounds, but from exhaustion and heartbreak. He had saved his species, but he could not save his world. The commander's final words had been recorded by the survivors around him. He had said that Dr. Amy Walsh would have been proud. He had said that humanity had proven they were more than just another primitive species. He had said that freedom was always worth the price. The humans had taught the galaxy something important, Zethkri told the tribunal. They had shown that courage and intelligence could defeat any enemy no matter how powerful. They had proven that some things are worth dying for. Lieutenant Sam Parker had become the unofficial leader of the surviving humans. He had organized the rebuilding efforts, established contact with other survivor groups, and began the long process of restoring human civilization. Parker sent a message to every species in the galaxy, Zethkri said. It was broadcast on all frequencies in every known language. He told them what had happened at Earth. He told them that the hegemony could be beaten. The message had been simple and direct. Parker had said that humans were willing to share what they had learned about fighting the hegemony. He had offered to help any species that wanted to win their freedom. He had said that Dr. Amy Walsh's dream of peaceful cooperation between species could still come true. Within a year, the hegemony empire had lost half its territory. Zethkri continued. Rebellion after rebellion, each one using tactics learned from the human victory. The galaxy had discovered that they did not have to accept alien domination. The surviving tribunal members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They all knew how the story ended. The once mighty hegemony was now just another small government controlling a few dozen star systems. 5 years have passed since the battle. Zethkri concluded his testimony. Earth is slowly recovering. The human population has grown to 7 billion again. They are building new cities and new spaceships. They are reaching out to the stars once more. But humanity was different now. Harder, more careful. They remembered what had happened to Dr. Amy Walsh. They remembered the price of trusting strangers. The humans we destroyed were explorers and dreamers, Zethkri said. The humans we created are warriors and survivors. We turned a species of peaceful scientists into the most dangerous military force in the galaxy. The final irony was complete. The hegemony had attacked Earth to prevent humans from becoming a threat. Instead, they had guaranteed that humanity would become exactly what they had feared. Parker's message still broadcasts across the galaxy, Zethkri finished. It reminds every species that freedom is possible. It tells them that no empire lasts forever. It promises that humanity will always be ready to help those who fight for their independence. Zethkri looked directly at High Sovereign Crixmon. You asked me to explain how 50,000 ships could lose to 500. The answer is simple. We were not fighting 500 ships. We were fighting an entire species that had spent 20 years preparing for war. We were fighting the determination of 12 billion people who refused to become slaves. The alien commander straightened his shoulders one final time. We outnumbered them 100 to 1, and still lost everything, because we never understood that sometimes the smallest force can achieve the greatest victory when they have nothing left to lose. The tribunal room remained silent for a long time after Zethkri finished speaking. Everyone present understood that they had witnessed the end of an empire and the birth of a legend. The humans had proven that courage, intelligence, and sacrifice could overcome any odds. The story of Earth's last stand would be told throughout the galaxy for generations to come.